think the Nuremberg Military Tribunal had come to an agreement that the greatest war crime of all was a war of aggression, because from the war of aggression, all other war crimes emerge. And so the idea was, how do we stop wars of aggression? They just banned it outright, illegal. There's two exceptions to this. One is a Chapter 7 resolution passed by the Security Council of the United Nations. And that is when the Security Council determines that a situation has occurred that threatens international peace and security and the welfare of nations, that it can authorize UN member nations to use military force to rectify that situation. The most recent example of a Chapter 7 war was Operation Desert Storm back in 1990, 1991. 1991 was Desert Storm, Desert Shield was 1990, in response to Saddam Hussein's invasion and occupation of Kuwait. Again, I'm not here to say good, bad, whatever. I'm just talking about the law right now. And the law said when he invaded Kuwait, the Security Council met and said, we're authorizing the use of military force. And military force was used to achieve the liberation of Kuwait. That is a lawful war. Doesn't make it a just war, doesn't make it a good war, it's just a lawful war. The other way that force is through Article 51. Article 51 allows for legitimate self-defense, either in terms of an individual nation or collective self-defense. And that's an important notion right now, collective self-defense. That's going to come into play. So basically, if you're attacked, you have the inherent right of self-defense. But now we come to one of the questions that emerged, and it actually comes from a period in American history, actually, 1837. There was a U.S. ship called the Caroline operating up by the Canadian border. And the Caroline was providing weapons and manpower, was smuggling weapons and material support to some Canadian rebels that were fighting the British Army. And the British Army knew that the ship was coming in, so the British Army attacked it. So the British Navy attacked the U.S. vessel, which is an act of aggression, unprovoked, they would say. But the British made the claim of the need of preemption based upon the imminent threat posed by the Caroline to the security of the British. So the concept of preemptive self-defense was born. And actually the Caroline affair, the Caroline case, is quoted to this day as one of the bedrock, the legal precedents for the doctrine of preemption. And preemption is basically if somebody's sitting there, bandaging their fist, getting their fist ready, telling you they're going to punch you, lifting weights, getting that big old arm up, and then they're ready to go, and you say, well, I'm not going to wait and just get punched. I'm going to hit them first. You preempted the attack, and that is legitimate self-defense. If there is a genuine imminent threat that can't be resolved by, for instance, going to the Security Council and asking for help. If you feel that you have to act now and a failure to act now would put you at an existential threat, you can't preempt. People have tried to use preemption. The United States tried to use this doctrine of preemption to justify the 2003 invasion of Iraq. It was all a lie. You can't preempt based on a lie. You can't manufacture a case on weapons of mass destruction and the nexus they form with al-Qaeda terrorism when there are no weapons of mass destruction and there is no nexus to al-Qaeda terrorism. So that falls apart. Now we come to Russia. Russia has articulated an Article 51 justification for its action in Ukraine. And they articulate it as a preemptive collective self-defense. Now, how can they do that? First of all, let's understand that Russia has no legal right to intervene in Ukraine if this is an internal Ukrainian dispute, meaning that so long as the Donbass was considered to be part of Ukraine, whatever the Ukrainian government is doing to the Russian speakers of Donbass is not Russia's affair. Russia can't intervene. They have no authority to intervene. They can go to the Security Council and ask for a Chapter 7 resolution to be passed, authorize intervention to resolve this, but they knew that wasn't going to happen because Ukraine was in bed with the United States and NATO. So this is where something you spoke of is very important. The two oblasts or districts of the Donbass, Donetsk and Lugansk, they passed resolutions earlier declaring their independence, but Russia did not recognize their independence. What they did now, or recently, in February of this year, is they petitioned. They passed their own legislation petitioning Russia to recognize them as an independent state. The Russians received that petition, considered that the petition, and then the Russian parliament granted that petition. Why is all this important? That's how constitutionally it has to proceed. So no one can say that this was just made up. No, the laws of the two oblasts, the laws of Russia, were preserved. Constitutional due process was seen. It was then presented to Vladimir Putin, who signed the documents recognizing the independent status of Lugansk and Donetsk. Now what has happened overnight? They're no longer an integral part of Ukraine. And so Russia now can say this poses a threat. But then there's another problem. Wait a minute. No one recognizes them but Russia. It's not like the United Nations says, oh, well, Lugansk and Donetsk, you're part of the family. So are they protected by the United Nations Charter if they're not a member? And the answer is no. Except here comes the nice little exception here, unless they're part of a collective security arrangement with a UN member. And guess who is a UN member? Russia. So Russia now has a collective security arrangement, another treaty that was signed after the recognition of independence. And this collective security arrangement now allows Russia to intercede on behalf of these security partners and resolve the security situation. Now, this only allows Russia to intervene in the Donbass, if we're talking about the law of war. Russia, however, took a look at the situation and said, well, wait a minute, if we go into the Donbass, the Ukrainians have massed between 60 and 100,000 heavily armed troops in eastern Ukraine. And we have intelligence that they're getting ready to launch an attack into the Donbass to preempt our assistance. So now if we go into the Donbass without dealing with this problem, that creates an existential threat for our security operation. We need to preempt the Ukrainian assault. So now the Russians are using the doctrine of preemption as part of collective self-defense to go after the Ukrainian buildup into eastern Donetsk. But you say, well, wait a minute, Scott, but didn't they also come up from Crimea and come down towards Kiev? How does that fit in? Because now, if you're going after those people, now you have to shape the whole battlefield. And from the Russian perspective, it's not just about the 100,000 troops you're trying to pin down in the Donbass. It's about the 100,000 troops up by Kiev, it's about the 80,000 troops out in western Iraq. It's about the 60,000 troops near Odessa. If you don't do anything about them, they will be able to maneuver in support of the other Ukrainians and defeat the Russian army. So now the Russians have to enlarge the scope of their preemptive attack to pin down these forces. And that's what we saw. When we saw the Russians coming in, it may look like this massive invasion of Ukraine is taking place. But the fact is, all these other things are merely supporting attacks to shape the battlefield so Russia can accomplish the primary mission of destroying 100,000 Ukrainian troops that are positioned opposite the Donbass and liberate the Donbass region. And what I just articulated right now, if I gave this presentation in law school, I would probably get a B+, but it is a cognizable articulation of a legitimate Article 51 claim under collective self-defense. The United States may try to disagree with it, but the problem with that is that the United States was part of a similar Article 51 collective self-defense argument put forward in 1999 when NATO bombed Serbia. It's the exact same thing. It was good for us then. All Russia's done is take that page, make it better, and put it out there. It's the same argument, the same case, and the same legitimacy, even more so because everything Russia has said about the threat from the Ukrainian army is true. Everything the NATO used to justify their preemption, for instance, the concept of the Serbians committing genocide against the Kosovar Albanians, was a lie. Whatever deaths were occurring is because the CIA was working with the Kosovo Liberation Army to create incidents that provoked fighting with the Serbians, which was then called genocide. It's just like the case, remember we talked about the United States invading Iraq and you can't get legitimacy off of making up a case about WMD. You can't get legitimacy about making up a case about Serbian genocide. Nothing we're talking about with the Russians is made up. The harm that was befalling the people of Donbass, the 14,000 dead, the buildup of Ukrainian military power, all of it is real and all of it can represent an imminent threat the security that justifies preemptive self-defense in a collective security arrangement.